Our next presentation is Research Data Management 101. What's it all about? Our presenters today are Erin MacPherson, who is the Research Data Management Librarian and the Liaison Librarian for the Faculty of Agriculture at Dalhousie University in Halifax, Nova Scotia. As well as we also have Melissa Rothfus, who is the Scholarly Communications Librarian and the Liaison Librarian for the School of Nursing, Classics, and Religious Studies, also at Dalhousie University in Halifax, Nova Scotia. So over to you, Erin and Melissa. Thanks very much. Actually, if you have any questions during the presentation, please put them in the chat and then we'll do questions at the end. So any questions, pop in there and I'll keep an eye on those and do those all at the end. Okay, so over to you.
Okay. Can everybody hear me? Let me see.
Yes.
Okay. I think that was Melissa responding, was it?
Yes, so that means you can hear me too. That's a good sign.
Okay, perfect. My co-presenter. All right. So hi, welcome. I'm Erin and Melissa is joining me. So we're going to do a short presentation on Research Data Management 101. What's it all about? And if you were here for Jeff's presentation this morning, it was excellent. And I'm really excited to hear about all of the initiatives and the work that's going on in Portage. I'm involved in some of the working groups and we regularly use the resources. They're such a great help and I'm really excited to see this development happening. All right, so this session today that we're doing should help you obtain a basic understanding of data management planning and some of the resources and tools that are available to help you. So I know we've got researchers, librarians, folks that support research, so Office of Research Services on the call. So this will be relevant to you in different ways. We're going to show a little video on how to avoid a data management nightmare. Some of you who may have been in some of my sessions have probably seen this, so bear with me. But it's a great video, and I want to give thanks to NYU for creating it. It's such a great video to show in these workshops and sessions. We're going to talk a little bit about the basics of research data management, and we're going to use the RDM 101 modules. So the Research Data Management 101 modules. These modules are available on the Portage website. They are an excellent resource. We use them regularly. The great thing is these materials are developed for you. I mean, there's instead of developing new materials, have a look at what's available on Portage and consider using those or adapting them. There's so much information out there. We'll talk a little bit about some of the key points from there and some additional information that came up. And Jeff highlighted some of those new initiatives this morning. And finally, we'll also talk a little bit about some of the resources and tools that are available for you. So specifically the DMP Assistant or the Data Management Plan Assistant, which is our free online bilingual data management planning tool. And a very brief intro to data repositories. Jeff talked a little bit about that this morning. We have Margaret Vale talking about Dataverse and a few others this afternoon. So we'll just basically highlight that some exist. So let's move along to the video. How to avoid a data management nightmare. So this is the video from NYU Health Sciences Library, and I'm going to slide it over now. Oh, and hopefully everybody can see the video. Please let me know if it's...
No problem, Erin, it looks good.
Okay. Hopefully you can hear the music. It's kind of suspenseful. Okay, so thanks for watching that video. If anyone has any thoughts on it, feel free to share them in the comment section. I'm just going to go back to this. Yeah, we showed this video in almost, I would say, the majority of our introductory data management sessions, and it's a good video to get you thinking, especially because it covers the importance of planning. As you can see, planning was critical in the data collection process, having those consistent file naming variables, planning for potential disaster as well. But one of the things that struck me a few years ago when I first showed this, we asked, it was for a class of graduate students, and we asked, what was your big takeaway from this video? And their response was communication. Communication is really important in the planning process. So if you're a graduate student, you're an undergraduate student, you're a research assistant, or you're a PI, talk about the expectations surrounding data management planning and the process with everyone in your team. Knowing what those expectations are, how you're going to deal with change, how you're going to deal with access sharing, how long you're going to keep things is really essential and critical. And I think, as Jeff mentioned this morning, you may not have the answer to every question when you start that process, but that's okay. We don't know the answers to everything right away, but it gets you thinking about it and gets you thinking, I need to talk to this person because they may be able to help me. I can talk to this department, they may be able to help me. Having those communications, regular ongoing communications, is really critical to have good data management, with good data management. And I found that was so interesting and neat that they brought that up. They saw that right away. And yeah, so I thought I would share that also. Okay, so now we're going to move to the second part, is learning the basics of research data management using the RDM 101 module review. And my colleague Melissa is going to take over from here. And we're going to be using the resources on the Portage website. And I think, Melissa, you should be able to share your screen. If not.
Yep, thank you. This will stop your screen sharing. I'm cool with that. Okay. Yep. And that, let's see.
I can see your screen.
You can see my screen. Fantastic.
Yes.
That was what I was hoping you would say.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So as Erin mentioned, what we're going to do is go through these 4 modules from the Portage website. So I see that many of you were at this morning's session with Jeff, so you should have some idea about what Portage is. And the great thing about Portage is you should not feel that it is just a resource for people who are really specialists or experts in RDM. There are a variety of resources for everybody. And these modules are very basic. They can be used for your own edification, and many of you might find yourself teaching, as Erin said, RDM yourself. And so you can potentially use these modules. And that's why we decided to go ahead and use them, even though it's a little bit clunky to do so when you do all 4 together. They all have their own title slides and their own list of objectives there. So we're going to go through these kind of quickly, just so that you have a sense of what the content is. And Erin then will take over after I'm done and just make sure that we've all followed through with the key points. So as you can see from module 1, it is very, very basic. Essentially what we're going to do, if we skip ahead here to where we get to some of the meat and potatoes of the presentation, is that we are reintroduced to this research data lifecycle that Jeff has already introduced most of us to. And the key takeaway from this is that research data management is integrated in every stage of that lifecycle. So this is not something that you think about at the end, as that video with its cautionary tales illustrated. It's really something that we need to be thinking about throughout that continuum. Benefits of RDM, again, that video illustrates a lot of them. But what we really need to appreciate is that this can help everybody. This helps the researchers make their own work more efficient. It helps make data and all the work, the investment that went into it as valuable and as useful as possible. And that includes the original researchers down the road who may be able to reuse it, as well as other people who may have access to it. Now, before I continue on here, well, actually, I'll do it on this next slide. It's important to realize that there are research data management responsibilities for a lot of different stakeholders. It really is a team effort. And because I want to use these slides not only to go over the content, but to make sure you're aware of them as tools, I will point out that we do have in many of these slides this little icon here with the eye. And that gives a few more notes for you as a presenter or a speaker if you want to make use of those. So that's another handy thing about it. Now, this first module is really as basic as that. It's just a very quick introduction. So moving on to module 2, we get into the definition of research data management. So as we see here, Jeff had provided us with one. Here's another basic one. What I really like to emphasize to people is that anybody who does research does use data. A lot of times the term data is perceived as being very STEM oriented, but any field that does research, including those in the humanities, involves data. We might choose to call it something else. We might call it the materials of research, for example, but data are facts. They are also observations or experiences, anything on which a theory is tested or an argument is based. And data can be quantitative. Certainly that might be what a lot of people think of, numerical data, but it can be descriptive, it can be oral, it can be visual. And so it is not limited to things like laboratory notebooks or field notebooks. It can include questionnaires, it can include texts, audio files, video files, models, photographs, test responses. So data are really diverse, and we need to think very broadly about what we're talking about here, and also keep in mind that our audience might have different ideas about what data are to them. So research data management, we've already kind of been talking about this already, but research data management is that process of making sure you're paying proper attention to your data from the beginning of your research endeavor, and that you are giving it the proper attention to be organized, that you're thinking of important questions that need to be answered, and you're doing it well in advance so that you're not caught shorthanded here. So kind of making it up as you go along is great for maybe a road trip, not so great when it comes to your research, because you are investing a lot of limited time and funds and other resources into gathering that data. You want to make sure you're doing it in the most effective way to ensure their value. All right, so why is RDM important? Again, because we want to make sure that our investments in collecting that data pays off. We don't find ourselves in the situation that our unfortunate PI did in the video that Erin shared. And we'll talk about data management planning more in a moment, but it's about doing that planning, that thinking ahead, that making those arrangements. Now, Module 3 talks about the Canadian policy review of what there is with respect to policies and research data management. So one of the key takeaways here that I'd like people to be aware of is that our interest in research data management and our attention to appropriate management of data is part of a broader international trend that is happening. And so there is an increasing interest on the part of research councils and funding organizations to make sure that research data is appropriately managed so that it has that maximum value that we've been talking about. Here in Canada, as Jeff said, what we have are not quite policies yet. So the title of the slide is a little bit misleading. We're moving in that direction right now. We have some directives and statements starting in 2015 when we have the Tri-Agency Open Access Policy on Publication. This is important. It primarily involves looking at the publication of articles and making sure that they are open access within, I believe it's 24 months of or possibly 12. Someone can correct me in the chat perhaps. You have to have things open access within a reasonable amount of time after publication so that publicly funded research is available for others to use. This policy does have a data requirement. It's a fairly specific and limited one, but as you see on the slide here, we have specific types of bioinformatics, atomic and molecular coordinate data need to be in public databases, and all data, whether available publicly or not, do need to be retained for a minimum of 5 years. Now, we have the following year a statement of principles on digital data management. So this is laying the groundwork, really making it clear what good research data management practices are, what data stewardship should be, and who is responsible for playing their part in making sure that data is responsibly managed. And so in the future, we may expect, and we hope to see within Canada, that submission of data management plans are part of grant applications as they are already in other countries. We can expect to see institutions coming up with their own policies and strategies on data stewardship and preservation as well. And also expectations that grant-funded data should be stored in repositories. So with that, again, we have some more resources related to this topic. And I'm sorry, I'm skipping through it quickly, but that's because we know some of this already, and Erin will be sure that we haven't missed any of the key points here. And then finally, in the 4th module that's available, we go back to this whole continuum here of the research process. So looking at those different stages in a little bit more detail, what we see are how research data management planning is embedded in every stage of that process. So when we are at the plan stage, there are a number of things we need to consider. And I think in terms of the questions we need to be asking ourselves at each stage in this process. And indeed, as I mentioned, we have this little icon here with extra notes, and there are some questions that are provided for us at this stage that we need to be thinking about. And so they include, what are the stipulations in your funder or your institution or publisher regarding data that need to be followed? So if your funding is contingent on following certain policies, you need to be aware of what needs to be done with respect to your data. What resources do you require to manage your data so you can plan ahead? Who is responsible for data management during the project? And that is a key one, because oftentimes when you have a group, or if you don't have a designated person who is responsible for something, there can be the assumption that somebody else is taking care of things, and something as important as research data management can really fall through the cracks. It could be a situation, oh, I thought you were doing that. Oh, I thought you were doing that. You don't want that to happen. You really do need to make it explicit who is responsible for what tasks in the project. It might be the PI, but they might designate someone else. That all needs to be clear. And who will be responsible long term. So if it is not the PI, then at what point might that responsibility be turned over to the PI for the long-term stewardship? After plan, we have the create, and this is where that video really showed us how research data management can be embedded in that part of the process here. So is your created or collected data in a suitable format for sharing long-term? Are your files and folders named and organized in a logical structure? What if a key person on the team, I don't want to say gets hit by a bus, that's morbid, but what if they win the lottery? What if they decide to go in another direction in their career? Maybe they get a really high paying job somewhere else. So can everybody else on the team step in and figure out what's going on, find out where everything is, and identify what things are? You really need to have things clearly named and organized. What documentation and metadata should accompany that data? And is everything, of course, securely created, collected, transferred, and stored? Okay, because we don't want things floating around, getting lost or getting stolen. When it comes to the process, things to consider are, how will you manage any ethical or privacy issues before analyzing your data? Does it require coding, transcribing, or transformation? Who will have access during that part of the process, and how will you manage that access? And again, securely storing data is something that's involved at every stage in this research continuum. When we move on to the analysis phase, again, access and managing that access are really key. When it comes to sharing, how much of your data will you make publicly available? What resources are in place for sharing your data among multiple sites with collaborating investigators, perhaps? How will you manage restrictions like licenses or privacy issues associated with your data before sharing? And how will you link your data sets to your published articles, books, or conference presentations? That's a real way to add value to those things by having everything linked together. And what about preservation? What data should be retained and preserved, and for how long? Are there any costs associated with that? And you really do want to be thinking in the big picture. Remember all those old floppy disks that many of us are old enough to have used not so very long ago? How many of us can read anything that we have on those floppy disks today? If we haven't at some point in the past made an effort to transfer that data, that ship may have sailed. So hopefully there was nothing important there, but if there is, then we really do need to be thinking about managing long-term preservation there. And then moving on to reuse. So will your data be fully open to the public, partially open to specified users? Will it be restricted? And if so, how will you manage restrictions? Are you going to have a license associated with your data? You might consider a data use agreement. Does your repository generate a DOI or other persistent link that can be used for publications or websites to easily discover your data? Will you register your data set with DataCite? So there's a lot to think about, lots and lots of questions, and that can be really daunting. I call this really brain intensive work, and it might be tempting to defer it a little bit, but these are all issues that you want to consider in advance with the data management plan. And instead of letting all those questions swirl around in your head, there are tools to help you work through all the necessary questions in order to have your data management plan in place. So Erin is going to make sure we're all on the same page with those key takeaways from these modules, and then we're going to introduce you to some very helpful and practical resources. So I'll turn that back over to you, Erin.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. All right. Oh, and share. Okay. Okay, so the next couple of slides are just going to provide a bit more detail and highlights from some of those modules. So you've seen the, I think we call it the circular research data management lifecycle. This is another example of where research data management fits in the research, in the data lifecycle and research lifecycle. And we like this one because it really shows you know, that it's an ongoing process. So we just wanted to show you another example of that. Again, if you were here this morning, you've probably heard Jeff talk about this a little bit. So we have progressed a bit with the tri-agency requirements. We now have a draft tri-agency research data management policy. And Section 3 of the policy contains important information. So as Jeff mentioned, the institutional requirements and researcher requirements. So that may require having a data management plan and depositing your data as well. So policy was to be released in early 2020. It's been delayed a little bit, and I believe Jeff said this morning, early 2021. So, and this would be a phased in implementation. So the first step would be the institutional RDM strategy. And again, Portage has some great guidance and templates available on their website. There's a number of institutions have already completed this or are working on it. So for those of you who are involved in that or looking to be involved, reach out to any of the colleagues on this call and Portage, and there's lots of resources to help get you started. Again, wanted to touch a little bit about the journal requirements. So one of the things mentioned was you might be looking, you might be publishing in a journal and they require you to have a DOI. So, you know, you might be looking, well, does the journal I'm looking to publish in have any data management requirements? And generally, if they do, you can find those in the instructions for authors or the author guidelines. We have some examples of data sharing policies. and data requirements from some journals listed. Not all, we just highlighted a few of them. Okay, so now we'll look at the resources and tools for data management planning. And Melissa mentioned a number of these in the RDM 101 modules. And generally there's 7 elements of a data management plan. So the data collection, the documentation and metadata, so the data about data, storage and backup, so where are you going to keep your data, how are you going to back it up, how often are you going to back it up, preservation, sharing and reuse, so is this going to be publicly shared, what is going to be shared, responsibilities and resources, again, this comes down to who is responsible for managing this data. Are different people responsible? Is it just the PI? And so on. And finally, ethics and legal compliance. So again, if you've gone through any of the REBs or the Research Ethics Board, you may find that you've addressed a lot of these issues in your ethics application. But again, a data management plan itself takes you through all of these components and gets you thinking about them really clearly. So we have some tips. Start your planning early. It is never too late to start. And planning is ongoing. I use the strategic planning as an example. We don't just write one and put it on the shelf. It's something we want to look at regularly. We want to evaluate, have things changed, and make and address those issues when it happens. We also want to make sure everybody has access to this plan too. So the key stakeholders should have access to the plan. So if you're working in a lab, everyone who is responsible for data should have access to it and be consulted and collaborate with in developing this plan. So back to communication. And finally, use the DMP assistant. So the data management plan assistant. We've covered so much this morning already. It would be hard to know where to start without the DMP assistant, but fortunately this tool gives you guidance and is very helpful. We also have some exemplar plans. So these are sample plans. We have 3 currently in the digital humanities and secondary data, and mixed methods. So there's 3 sample data management plans available on the Portage Network website. Now, I believe Jeff said this morning, and please correct me if I'm wrong, there's 12 more coming. That could be templates, but there are a number more sample plans coming, which is fantastic. But in the meantime, these are a great resource to get you started. Okay, so now we'll talk about the tool itself, the DMP assistant. I think we have about 10 minutes. It's an all-purpose tool for preparing a data management plan. It walks you step by step through a number of key questions. So those 7 steps to a data management plan, it will walk you through each one and ask you those key questions. There's also guidance and examples. And for those of you who may be responsible for providing data management services, there's an administrative function where you can design templates for your institution and provide institutional specific guidance. So not all questions will apply to research projects. So researchers can, skip a question that doesn't apply to them. But if you are also responsible for providing data management services, so maybe you're a librarian or a data manager, you can create a template specific for your institution or for your research group. And so there is guidance available. There's an administrative function that allows you to do that. And finally, researchers should revisit the tool throughout their research to review or complete their responses. So again, it's like that strategic plan. It doesn't sit on the shelf. Things change, people graduate, get new jobs, retire. All kinds of things can happen. So it's a living document. We do have a video, a 2-minute video. I will not show it to you, but we're going to go to, it basically just explains how to create an account and use it. Use the DMP assistant, but I'm going to go to the website itself and show you how to get started that way. Okay, so depending on what institution you are with. You may find a link to the DMP assistant on your library homepage. So at Dalhousie, we have links to it available on our data management library subject guide and on our website. But you can also just go to the Portage website or Google the DMP assistant Portage. And they just released this new design this morning, so I had to look a moment to see where the DMP assistant is located, but it is right here today. So I'm going to click on this, and now we have two options. If you have an account already, you can sign in, and if you are new, you can sign up for an account. Use a valid email address. You'll get an email confirmation. Like we always remind people, check your junk mail just in case it gets sent there. Sometimes it happens. Choose your organization that you are with. And if your institution isn't listed, contact the Portage Network, and then create a password and accept the terms and conditions and sign up. So you'll see a little note below. They're working on single sign-in authentication, so you could sign in with your institutional account credentials. Jeff or Lee or someone from Portage can correct me if I'm wrong. When the DMP 2.0 comes out, hopefully soon, that may be a feature there. Okay, so I already have an account, so I'm going to sign in. Oh, and one thing to point out, the version français is above. So if you would like to use that version, you can do so. And, oops. Bear with me for a moment. Okay, so I have logged in, and you can see I have a number of plans below. I have a real plan, but a number of them are just test plans that I create. So if you have no plans created already, this page will be blank. When I'm preparing to start a plan, we'll click on Create Plan on the top right. And to see institutional questions and guidance, select your organization. So the Portage Network has generic guidance. It includes all of the questions. This is fine to select. Again, you don't have to answer every question, so it's up to you. I'll use Dalhousie as an example. So I'm going to choose Dalhousie University and then choose a template. So I'll use the Dalhousie University generic plan. We have 3 listed below. So if you're an administrator, you can create a plan for your institution. I've created another one. Myself and Mun, we have a shared plan here, but I'm going to choose the Dalhousie University generic plan and create it. So this is the neat part here. All the questions I need to answer, probably more than I might need to answer depending on my project, are listed here. So this section, please fill in the basic project details below and click Save to save. So choose your plan name, an ID, and you can see on the right that helpful guidance is coming up. So an ID would be a pertinent ID as determined by the funder and or institution, grant number, principal investigator and researcher, principal investigator researcher ID. So if I have an ORCID ID, I can list that. And the plan data contact. So in some cases, you may assign the creation of a data management plan to somebody in your lab or your research team. So the plan data contact can be somebody different. It doesn't necessarily have to be the PI. It depends. And then a description of the plan. So this is a basic description of your research project and guidance. So briefly summarize the type of study or studies to help others understand the purposes for which the data are being collected or created. And then when you're finished that, you can click Save and then continue on to answer your questions. So these are all the questions listed below. As you can see, there are 7 sections, as we mentioned. And as I mentioned before, some of them may seem familiar. So if you've done an ethics application, you may have addressed some of these, but this is different. This is data management, and it's a document that's going to be shared with your team, and it's going to be revisited. It should be revisited regularly. And it does have some really important things that you want to have available and you want to refer to regularly. So let's go start answering some questions. Actually, we won't really answer questions, but I'm going to show you some of the nice features of this tool. Okay, so we're going to start answering questions. You can see here, it tells you how many questions per section. So data collection has 3 questions. We can see 0 are answered. One of the great things about the DMP Assistant is that you can share this with collaborators. So if you're part of a research team that is located across Canada or in another country, you can have collaborators work on this plan with you also. So if somebody is typing test answer, I'm just going to put in here, you can save and you can see that I've answered it. So if you've assigned this to somebody, you can see which questions have been answered, who answered them, and so on. On the right-hand side, there's some guidance. And again, if you're using an institutional template, so if you want to create your own, you can have some institution-specific guidance below. And for Dal, much of the guidance is the same as the generic guidance, but we do have some sections that are a little specific to Dal or to whatever institution you're with. The other nice thing you can have is a share note. So this can be a reminder or just a note for your colleague, please ensure you put this information in this section. So when your colleagues or the person assigned to complete this plan is working on it, they'll be able to see some guidance from you and some share notes from you or whoever puts them in there. And then you can save them here as well. So the nice thing is you don't have to create this plan all at once, because like anything, we don't have the answers right away. These are things, you may have to consult with other people, other departments, and then come back to it. So we only have 5 minutes left. So I'm going to just quickly show you a few more features before we go back to the end of the presentation and hopefully get a chance to answer.
Actually, Erin, we have a few questions as well.
Okay.
So if you could finish up in like 2 or 3 minutes, and then
I will do that.
Have a few minutes for questions. Great. Thank you.
All right. I'm pretty much done. So these sections, Melissa has, she's covered a lot of this, the storage and backup preservation. And again, I'm going to reiterate the importance of the conversation. So talking with everyone involved in your research project, outlining what everyone's expectations are, clarifying, the data that you're collecting, using a specific file naming scheme, just having those conversations initially and ongoing. So as you see in the video, the PI had that initial conversation, sent them off, and 6 months later they came back. So again, having ongoing communications is important. Okay, so back to Portage DMP Assistant. We've got the questions we're using DALs, and right here under this tab, there is a share feature. So if you have collaborators you want to work on this plan with you, add their name and you can give them permissions, co-owner, edit, read only. And then finally, when you're ready, so if you have to submit this to a funder or so on, you can export it. You can export as a PDF or other file formats as well. Personally, I like using a Word because I can fancy up the formatting a little bit, but it's up to you. There's some extra settings as well that you can use. Only you have access to your plan, you and whoever else you authorize. Again, you can revisit it online anytime you want. But yeah, so that's, there's some help features here as well. But if you have questions, I encourage you to talk to the person at your institution who is using or who is, I guess, responsible for the DMP assistant and doing training. You can also check out Portage and the resources they have available on their website also. So I'm going to go back to my presentation, and that is actually everything. So Melissa and I are happy to take questions, and if not, if we can't answer them all today, we can hopefully get back to them.
We actually have a number of questions in the chat, so I will go through them. Some of them are quick and some might be a little bit longer, but okay, so the first question we have is, could you please elaborate on using compound variables? What was the recommendation? Use compound or not compound VRS? I'm assuming that's variables. If not, please correct me. In your example, should we use BMI or should you use height and weight?
So you should use height and weight because there are a couple different ways to calculate BMI. So if you have the most granular variable, then you can calculate it any way you like. You can change your mind. But if you have only recorded the compound variable, the BMI, you don't have its component parts. So you can't go back and change your mind later. So doing the most granular, the height and weight is going to serve you well in the future.
Perfect, thank you. And second question, how would we deal with missing data, especially in Likert type scales?
I don't know if Erin wants to jump in on that. I think that's not necessarily a question for us. It
Yes.
depends a lot on the situation, how much data is missing, but we're not research methods experts necessarily. What we offer is information on how to manage data, not necessarily aspects of the research itself. I would refer you to someone who's an expert on the methods that you're working in and statistics, but I don't know if you have a different answer to offer, Erin.
No, that is what I agree.
The only thing I would say there, this is Allison, I would say if you think that's likely, make a plan for that before you collect your data. So think about those kind of things at the beginning. Okay, so thank you for that answer. Flying right through here. This is technically the end of this presentation, but the next one doesn't start for 5 minutes. So I think we're okay to keep going for another couple. So thirdly, do you recommend using a data dictionary as part of data management?
Yes.
I was going to say yes, especially terminology may not be familiar for everybody. Just to communicate, you know, what's in your project and what's available. Yes. I want to say yes.
Yeah, that video illustrated why, I think, quite clearly. And they flashed up a page of a data dictionary really quickly in the video because, you know, with that whole pulse and pulse ox issue, yeah, if you have a data dictionary, then it's very clear what you're collecting, how you're collecting it, and what it's called. You avoid miscommunication.
Are we still online?
Allison, are you frozen? I think there is another question here.
I think Allison did freeze, or her screen froze. Yeah.
So
yes.
I see in the chat number 4, when we use an online survey, would the responsibility for data management rely on the company of the or the company of the software we are using?
I just want to make sure I'm clear on the question, and I can only give probably the DAL context and the specific software that's recommended. So if we use Opinio, which is what is often recommended at DAL, that's not permanent access, and we do have to remove the data after so many days. Like we only have the license for the duration of our project or however long has been approved. So then we're still responsible for that data and where it's stored and how it's stored and how it's accessed and so on. I think I'm answering that question correctly.
That's how I interpret the question as well. Yeah, the person responsible for data management, or the people, are the research team and the PIs in particular. The software company is a tool that you're using for your research, but they are not the people who are directly receiving the funding. If that project is funded, the buck doesn't stop with them. If it's your research project, you are responsible for the research data management.
Yeah, and I know, well, I guess it's all contextual too, because I think just in the case of our project, you know, we only had a certain time limit when we could have our data stored on the opinion, and our license only had an expiration date through DAL, so we had to have our data removed from the survey software before our license expired. So it was ultimately our responsibility.
And I see that Allison has gone away, so hopefully she's trying to log back in, because this next question would be best addressed by her, actually. But it's,
yes.
if your research project has many evaluative components, qualitative, quantitative, mixed, do you recommend one plan or multiple plans? And also, do you know who at MUN is responsible? And we would refer you to Allison over at MUN for that. But Erin, do you want to take the first part of the question? One plan, multiple plans? How does that work?
Well, I think it depends. I hate to say, it depends. But you could have one large overarching plan, but then, if you have several projects within that, you may want to have a plan for each one, because you may have a different, you may have different people involved in each component. So it may be better served by having separate plans for those, connect it to the larger overarching plan. I realize that may not sound totally clear, and it may seem like more work, but it's actually not, because you will have to address, if they are, different people involved and maybe in different locations, there will be different aspects that you would have to address. I always think of it, it's like another folder hierarchy, I guess.
I think of it that way too. So there's sort of one plan to rule them all that is, linking everything so that everybody knows what's going on here, but you might have separate aspects or separate threads or branches within that. So Allison, it looks like you're back. Can you hear us?
I can hear you now. Yes.
Okay,
sorry,
awesome.
my power flickered and my internet went out and I got kicked out. But I actually lost my chat in here.
That's
so I
okay.
don't have the other questions.
Well, there's only one final one, and I do see that we're out of time here, but it's, are you the person at MUN responsible for DMP?
Yes. Okay. I am. So if somebody wants to contact me, go for it.
All right. Awesome. I think we're done.